How's life?
Uphill and against the wind on a slick surface.
I asked that because I figured I was going to get something good. Where are you located?
I'm in Hampton, New Hampshire.
Oh, good. Okay. That's one part of the world I haven't been to. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
But that whole area up there just sounds dreamy. Like that's where Hollywood needs to live.
Well, I love Kansas City ribs.
Oh, yeah, you should. You're a good man for that. Well, it's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into your very colorful life, and how retirement is and all the things that are going on in your world. And to begin that, probably one of the most tumultuous things we've gone through in our lifetime was this pandemic. How did you survive that 4 year time period or so, and how did it change you?
Well, interestingly enough, I was in the midst of the books. And so my time was well occupied. But I was also, at that time, my wife was ill and I was a caregiver. So I had my daily duties and then I had my homework to do every day. So it was kind of like a blip in life.
Yeah.
I wasn't going out much anyway, so
Yeah.
it just worked out.
But it was a weird psychological phenomenon at that time because it seemed like everything melted together. Like I can't pick apart years and times in that time period. It's just weird.
Oh, I agree with you. The only the significant point for me was I moved from a house by the ocean to a condo, so I could better care for my wife. And so I moved on February 15th of 2020.
Okay.
So that kind of like put a new stake in the ground.
Absolutely.
And so then going forward, but you're right, it is kind of a blur
Yeah.
because
It's
everything became a hassle.
yeah. Living in Kansas City being landlocked, I don't get a look at majestic things like mountains or oceans. What's it like to live next to an ocean? Do you ever lose that allure and magic of looking at a massive body of water?
No,
Yeah.
that's what I miss the most. Is I used to have coffee in the morning and watch the sun come up
Wow.
over the Atlantic. I mean, that I think of all the things that I miss about that house. That's it,
Yeah.
because I was very quiet. Generally alone at sunrise, but it never got old.
There's a rhythm you get into with nature, right? Like there's just something that human beings, I mean, that's our native tongue isn't a smartphone. Our native tongue is the land,
That's right.
you know? So let's get into what you do now and what you did before you retired. I'm going to put you
Okay.
in front of a bunch of third graders. This will probably be a two-part question.
Okay.
And it's career day, and one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Well, I answer I'm that I'm currently retired, but when I was working, I owned my own business. I was a marketing consultant and a database marketing company, and so I refer to what I did in early days was junk mail and junk telephone. So it's advanced mightily because of the internet, but my background was 20 some years in database marketing.
Okay.
And then I went in, when I got tired of that, then I went into commercial real estate and business brokering. And that got pretty boring pretty quick.
Yeah.
But then I decided to write a book. And so that kind of started a different chapter. Business chapter closed, author chapter opened. But I was writing the book with a purpose.
Yeah.
My son-in-law is an agnostic,
Okay.
and I've tried to have conversations with him about religion in general or Christianity, and he kind of shuts down. So I'm thinking, I think there's a better way to try to get this idea across to my son-in-law. So he's my target market, but he's also in his 50s now. And what that did is it opened up a larger window, because if I look at membership in our church, in my church, there's a void of 40 and 50-year-olds. And I've tried to figure out what that's all about. I thought it was because baby boomers dropped the ball, and maybe we did. But I also, in an interview like this, the interviewer said, "Well, what about that's about the time when religion was kicked out of public schools? Was back in the you know 70s, 80s, and it went from persona non grata to don't even mention it,
Yeah.
and to now we don't want to even talk about it. So it's in that background that I wrote the first book, and I wrote it juxtaposing Jesus Christ with Steve Jobs. And the reason for Steve Jobs is my son-in-law is an Apple advocate. He loves Apple products. So I thought, well, if I can hook this together and show the sinew of God and man and God, and maybe it's not as complex as you're trying to make it. Uh, he might see some questions to ask. Let me put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to come to an awakening, but at least I got to get him talking.
Yeah.
Now I gave him a copy of the book a couple of years back, and I'm afraid to ask him if he's read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I'm waiting for him to approach me, but I don't want to. I'm not holding my breath now. I did for a while, but now I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah.
But anyway, what came out of that is the publisher said, "Do you have any more books that you could think in the same vein?" And that's when I did Constant Courage with Martin Luther King, Nifty Neighbors with Mr. Rogers, and Consummate Coaches with Bill Belichick. Again, juxtaposed to Jesus Christ and what his message was compared to these individuals, and try to show the link of man and God.
Yeah.
Um, that was my strategy, and I'm still pushing the rope uphill.
Yeah.
Because in the publishing world, as you're probably aware, there's 30,000 books at any time floating around
Yeah.
unclaimed.
Yeah. For sure
So
they are.
I make it 30,004.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Oh, my dream is to be an army man.
Yeah.
My father was a professional, was a lifer, as it's referred to. Uh, my brother went to West Point. He was a lifer. My brother-in-law was a lifer. And for my whole life, I just wanted to be an army. I want to be in the army. And so I went to college to go to ROTC, so I could go in as an officer, and I did. And it took about 6 months,
Yeah.
and I realized, boy, that third grade idea was not for me.
Yeah.
It was great for a third grader, but man, Alan,
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be my life. So
Yeah.
I'm the black sheep of my family that I did not stay on active duty. I just did 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you?
Oh boy. Well, I think the people I wrote about for different reasons. I think Steve Jobs and Martin Luther King, Mr. Rogers, and Bill Belichick. I mean, they all qualify as hallmark individuals for me. Um, Interestingly enough, Bill Belichick's the only one still alive, but
Yeah.
it was. I think that their messages spoke to me. So I would have to say the people I wrote about um, that were motivation. Plus, I had a very capable pastor who nudged me a little bit on the first book, and so she helped me develop the links and everything, and so she kind of became part of the whole moving forward and making a commitment to this, because it's a lot more work than I wanted it to be.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive right now on the planet that you find fascinating, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Uh, Actually, I'd like to meet Bill Belichick
Yeah. Yeah.
because his model of being a coach. I mean, they literally wrote the book about him.
Yeah.
and I mean, the guy never took he took the heat. If his team wasn't doing well, he said I wasn't coaching well enough. It wasn't their problem. It wasn't bad players. It was bad coaching. And so it's like, man, you don't find a lot of those kind of people around,
No,
you know.
no. And
So
and he had a template that worked. I remember Kansas City before we got St. Mahomes on his magic horse and all of
right,
these things started happening. People were trying to mimic that New England Patriots culture, and it just died on impact here. Like
right.
that we got a GM and players and this mentality, and it just didn't go anywhere. So it's yeah, they had it going.
Well, and it's tough to walk in somebody try to be somebody else.
Yeah,
I mean, Belichick isn't role playing.
yeah,
That's who he is. But if you're trying to be Bill Belichick, now you're role playing, and
yeah,
so you're once removed from reality already. So
yeah. You
that's a
certainly are.
tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What has been the motivation for you in your career and even now writing these books? You obviously are giving a lot to people, you're putting a lot into it. What is that gas in your tank to do this and to be consistently good at it?
Well, it's not money. I can,
Right.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Uh, I think part of my motivation is as I mentioned, Christians have dropped the ball on communicating, and having a building and saying come to our building isn't working. And I don't know if it ever did, but it's particularly not working now. So I look at these as a way to try to get the message out without beating somebody over the head with it.
Yeah.
And so that's my motivation. If these books can help turn anybody towards the Lord, I'm successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So what's been the best response that you've gotten from your books?
Well, interesting. Some of the reviewers and stuff read them, and one of them made a comment that he thought the title of the Extreme Entrepreneurs was a joke. I mean, he thought, "Come on, you can't call Jesus Christ an entrepreneur." But once he read it, I think he understood what my intent was there.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to bring Jesus down to man. I was trying to elevate man up to Jesus.
Yeah.
The other way around.
Yeah.
Uh, so, well, that was the idea.
Yeah, for sure. So, as a writer, when you were a kid, what was the first book that you ever read that really made you either want to read more or write at some point?
Oh boy, I don't remember. That's a very good question. I just you think about Lord of the Flies, and you think
Yeah.
about all the ones we had to read, and gosh, I don't know. I won't. I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay, no, that's good. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved into in your life and the different incarnations, what are you the
Yeah.
proudest of?
Probably my kids,
Yeah.
because my daughter's very successful. She is a realtor, very very capable woman, and my son is a middle manager, I would say, with the State Department in the spook division, and so they're successful, and so I think having successful kids says, "Gosh, I did something right."
Yeah.
And so I would have to say my kids, and it's interesting to watch my grandchildren because you really see what you did with your kids by your grandchildren,
Yeah.
and I think they're great.
Yeah. That's awesome. So let me ask you this. Speaking of youth, if you had a dream tonight and you ran into the 18-year-old version of you, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you give your younger self?
Well, I would say get your knees fixed
Yeah.
because I had bad knees from playing high school football,
Yeah.
which was has been a problem all my life. I finally got them fixed about 8 or 9 years ago with replacements. But I think I would tell my 18-year-old me is pay attention more to the details of life,
Yeah.
because I think I was kind of like the rock skipping across the pond. I really didn't have any depth and pay attention to details. I was just hell having going for it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't even. And if you said, "What does that mean?" I would say you'll have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the answer. I just know that by the time I was to the point that I wanted to have the details to write about, I had to really think about some of the details and do a lot of homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I skipped a couple of chapters there. I've been a state rep for 10 years,
Okay.
and I've been the chairman of my town's planning board for 27 or 24 years. So
Okay.
those are other two governmental involvements I've had. And I would tell the 18-year-old, pay attention to your government.
So I'm curious, we've entered this kind of level of political theater now that we've never seen before.
Right.
Talk to me about contrast that with your level of public service of what you did. What is it meant for you to serve as a public servant?
Well, I went into it, I think, like most people do, saying, well, I'm going to help change things.
Yeah.
Uh, Once you get into it, and the common analogy is how they make the sausage.
Yeah.
It takes you. Here, we were elected for a 2-year term. The first 2-year term, you're stupid because I mean, things are whizzing by you 90 miles an hour. You don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You finally figure out in your second term that you're talking about the exact same stuff you did in your first term. It just has a different wrinkle to it. You're
Yeah.
still talking about abortion. You're still talking about education. You're still talking about funding this and funding. Nothing changes, just the term. So you're all the time debating the same basic topics because in our form of government, there's a yin and a yang, and the goal is to yin and yang each other. And that's what legislating is all about.
Yeah.
Um, but I think when I ran and won the first time, I said I'll do 5 terms, and I did the 5 terms. They didn't want me to leave because I'm a chairman of a committee now. But I said I do 5 terms, and I got to move on. You
Yeah.
know, because the sameness gets boring. And I don't mean that the government's necessarily boring, but the struggle of the arguments, they haven't changed.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how long do you want to pull on the rope? You
Yeah.
know, we
Yeah.
got two sides. We're playing tug of war here. And how long do you want to pull on the rope? And you say, I did it for 10 years. That's enough pulling on the rope.
Yeah. For sure. Well, I've thought about that before. When you get in there, there's these ideologies that you have. There's these things that you want to change, but it's almost like you get into the gears of the bureaucratic machine. It's like things just they just get grinded up, and it's the polarization of things. Because I know when I went to Europe, there was a two or three, four party or 3 or 4 party system, and there was a little bit more collaboration going on. But it seems
Right.
like when you have two extreme sides, no one can see eye to eye.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting comparison because New Hampshire has 400 representatives.
Wow.
And so this last term, there were 207 Republicans and 193 Democrats,
Yeah.
and some Republicans left. So and a couple of more Democrats got elected. So the difference was about
Yeah.
four more Republicans and Democrats. We passed the budget on a voice vote, which is unheard of. The reason being because of the collaboration you just mentioned. When you get that close in count, in head count, so it's not lopsided, you do a lot more collaboration.
Yeah.
My committee was involved in the school budget, and I'm negotiating $1 billion discussions, and there's 4 of us in the room, and I'm sitting here saying, "Holy mackerel! I'm talking about $1 billion." I've never dealt with $1 billion before,
Yeah.
so it does get a little weighty once you start moving into leadership and having responsibilities to go negotiate, and do things on behalf of your party, um, it gets a little heavy then,
Yeah.
because now you're that actor that's acting on behalf of all these other people,
Yep.
and negotiations come down to a little bit of give and take, and it actually works out better with your attitude if you go in with the attitude we're going to resolve this before we go to the House floor
Yeah.
and debate it. And it was quite interesting.
Yeah. So in your lifetime, what would you say is one of the best pieces of legislation that's ever been passed?
Well, I actually signed it. It was in New Hampshire. We had no limit abortion. You could have abortion to the day of delivery, and so we actually negotiated and passed a 6 month. You can have an abortion up to 6 months, and then in the last trimester, if there's difficulties, medical difficulties, you can have an abortion. But to actually have the state say we respect a, an unborn's right at month, at weeks. I'm talking weeks here. At week 26,
Yeah.
is saying that the state has that responsibility. I think that was a lot of debate, but I feel, but I'm glad I was involved in the signatory on that one,
Yeah, for sure.
moving it out of the house. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, all of your readers, everyone that knows you, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, well, I think I'm somebody that's become very observant. Um, I like to tell a good story just like everybody else, but I don't talk near as much as I used to. My current mode is I'm probably a 70% listener and a 30% talker. Where back in my business days, I was a 70% talker and a 30% listener. So I think, I guess my style has changed, but my brain still drives me crazy. Nobody can see that, but I call it busy brain. When you wake up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're cranking on something,
Yeah.
you may as well get up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think most of the people I've dealt with and deal with would say I'm reliable in the sense that if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. Like I've been the moderator in my church for 36 years, and that's an elected position annually. So they must have some confidence in what I'm doing.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So if anyone wants to pick up the book, anyone wants to learn more about you, reach out, any of the good business, where should they go?
Right now, it's online booksellers,
Okay.
Amazon, and uh, I do have a book website. It's author TracyEmerick.com, or they can email me at TracyEmerick@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to dialogue with anybody.
Okay. Okay. What an interesting concept for the book. What a wonderful existence you've had. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time today. Keep doing the wonderful work out there, man.
Thank you.
Take care.